he is a representation of people that we hoped weren't quite as represented as they are. And he continues to be in the White House. He still is, he's allowed to do what he does. Nobody stops him. Nobody can stop him. I don't know, maybe. But I don't think it is him that is the problem.
Every little kid is taught that they shouldn't talk to strangers. I mean, do you talk to strangers? How do you know if a stranger is worth speaking to? Hey, kid, don't talk to strangers. Where's my daughter at? I'm gonna go get my daughter in here in a minute and tell her she's 3 weeks old, but she needs to know this.
I think, okay, what I think where it starts, maybe I start that way, is that it starts within, in oneself, because I think with freedom one goes quickly to like a political freedom of like, I'm not imprisoned, I'm not, I can still practice my freedom of speech and all that stuff, the big stuff. But I think the real job of freedom is within your own soul, within your own conscience. Do I feel free? Like in the big picture, I feel free. Like on an everyday basis sometimes, no, there are restrictions. Like you can't just follow every whim. It can be uncomfortable when you have something big that you've signed up for, or if you have like something that you maybe is uncomfortable, but it stretches you in ways. Revolution, to revolve, is also, it just means to turn around, right? It means to make one turn, like a revolving door. So revolution, if you turn it around, you switch it around, it's probably gonna hurt, but it doesn't necessarily need to be violent. It can be brutal nonetheless. It doesn't mean to be only soft. It doesn't mean that you go and follow every person's, desire, or oh you're sad, or you're upset. It doesn't need to end in agreement all the time to be kind. Or it doesn't mean, I agree. Kindness is also to have the heart to say what needs to be said. With every human encounter, there is a new possibility. There's a possibility of discovering something that you have not ever known before, both in discovering the other person, but also yourself. So I ended up in Hudson because of work. They were looking for people who would take on the Campbell Hudson houses with 5 people with special needs. And they were really looking far and wide, and nobody jumped on it. There was just nobody who was in a position to do that at that point, when they were really looking for someone, and there was talk of even closing it. And then my friend Carrie and I, we looked at each other, and Carrie said, we can't have that happen, this needs to continue should we do this together? And without a beat of hesitation, I said, yes, let's do that. And we have been incredibly well received by this community. You know, they had first, before they even purchased the house, they had gone around the neighborhood asking people, how would you feel if there was one of those fancy houses that are, you know, on Allen Street? How would you feel if there would be a group with people with special needs? And all the neighbors had nothing but positive and welcoming things to say. I think I've always had a more generous outlook on life and on the people around me, and compassionate. I've always, from a very young age, I'm saying like 9, 10, 11 years old, I started volunteering. I worked with people with special needs back then already. Most of us are having more than we know we do. We often think we work out of a deficit, or we let ourselves believe that we work out of a deficit. But I think if you volunteer, then you can actually work out of abundance. But just as a background, you need to know that we had come from Russia. We had been in not a wealthy area of Russia. We were in a village 2 hours away from St. Petersburg. It really knocks out the stuff in you that you think you have to have in order to survive. You can make a really good soup, even if a handle is missing. You know, you learn to improvise. There was no other way, because we couldn't go and buy the jams and pre-mixed this and that, or, you know, we had to harvest our potatoes. And then I went to Palo Alto. Big houses that go from fence to fence, you know. Aesthetic wasn't really the question, but size was, you know. And just like, oh my God, and the cars and the restaurants and the lights in the stores that were on all night long, and just that, it was a culture shock. You know, of course, I would like to sit here and say, oh, you know, free of judgment. I don't judge people. I've done that in the 20s. I'm done now. I would really like to be able to say that I don't judge people. However, I do judge people, and I think we always judge people all the time. And the judgment can be as me saying, Joe, you really look handsome today. That's a judgment. Or I can say, Joe, somehow that scarf and that shirt, I don't know what you were thinking. It's a judgment. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think we can all do with a whole lot less and actually gain more. Because one gets so distracted by stuff. One gets so distracted by some information, like always checking up the news, always like all that. But I think it's a great thing, but it's also, I think it distracts us from what's important.
Have you ever noticed nothing? The complete absence of anything. Like oxygen shared in the thick, hollow air. When it's only mine to breathe. Have you ever noticed nothing? The heavy silence of breathing. How our lungs fill. While my heart is still. And yours is the only one beating. The sound of nothing is deafening.
It hurts when you put it in your mouth. I'm German. You can't eat that.
It's good. It's my people.
How did we get from love to chocolate? When you tell somebody you love them, you also take a little risk, because you don't know where it lands or how it lands, or if it will be misunderstood. I mean, I'm not randomly just going out. Look. I usually really just say it when I mean it. I mean, partially why I can't listen to pop music is I'm just so sick and tired of listening to all those love songs. It's just like, oh, jeez. Especially if they're bad songs. It's like, oh no. What was the song yesterday at the Dunkin' Donuts?
I don't know.
It was horrific.
It was pretty terrible.
And they sell that stuff and call it art. You know, it's like, I think true intimacy is only able when you really bare your soul, when you're not afraid to bare your soul with the other person. If there's really, you know, the emperor's clothes have come off and you just... the things that really matter in life, I don't think they have actually ever changed. It's still the basic human needs or the basic human values have not changed. It's still important to love. It's still important to be kind. It's still important to be honest. It's still important to, you know, all those values that, you know, that it's not a religious value. It's a human value.